Jarvis, drop my needle.
Hello, this is the hardcore legend Mick Foley, and if you are interested in listening to idiots, you came to the right place. Have a nice day.
Woo! That's an attention getter.
He's a very strange young man.
He's an idiot.
What we're dealing with here is a complete lack of respect for the law.
Oh my God, he's an idiot.
You know, of course, that you're out of your jurisdiction.
Personally, I think you're an idiot.
But that's the evidence in the car.
But I was going into Toshi Station to pick up some power converters.
Always like to keep my audience riveted.
Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, friends and fiends, and welcome to Free Range Idiocy, the podcast about everything, but mostly just the stuff we like. Sequels are, at best, a mixed bag that seldom live up to the original, and in many cases, wind up actually diminishing the memory of what came before them. However, we've been on an odd run of follow-ups recently that have not only picked up a story decades later, but also managed to do it with some degree of delicacy and artistic flair. Which brings us to our subject tonight. In 1986, we thrilled to the exploits of a fighter jock with a need for speed. 36 years and a conversion to alien worship later, and we're back to see what Pete Mitchell has been up to. Will he save the day? Will he run? Will we even still care? We find out in this, episode 107. Talk to me, nostalgia. Top Gun Maverick. I am your Uncle Todd, and with me, as always, is a person who was washed out of flight school by going ballistic on an Admiral's bourbon cabinet. He has been my partner in Idiocy for over 2 decades and the best wingman anyone could ask for. I give you the man they call Tim.
Talk to me, Goose. Talk to me.
Oh my gosh, could he have said that any more in the freaking movie? And then when the kid said it, I'm like, okay, all right, time out. You kid didn't earn it, all right? You have not earned it. I almost stood up from my chair, except I was stuck to it by like 3 jujubes and a milk dud. So, as we all know, like the theater experience is not what it used to be, and it was already pretty crappy. And now it's like ain't nobody cleaning those theaters. They're not even cleaning them like nightly. It's like monthly now. So I mean, you go in there, like I don't know what the cleaning schedule is, but I mean, we went into this theater today, and I was like, it's pretty funky in here right now. Let me tell you. It's like, what other sort of movies are they running in here after they finish the first runs? Because it feels a little grimier than what I'm accustomed to, shall we say.
Oh, dear.
Anyways, how are you doing, sir?
I'm well. I'm doing well. Had a nice, restful weekend and got to take in some jazz on Saturday. Got to take in Maverick today and had a great Father's Day.
Yes, and actually a happy belated Father's Day.
Thank you,
sir. Even though we texted, I feel like we ought to record this for posterity.
Indeed, and a happy Father's Day to you, sir.
Oh, well, thank you. We actually had it in our minds that we might record on Father's Day, and I don't know what in the hell we were thinking.
I said to my wife yesterday, I'm like, I am in no mental space to prepare an outline or talk about anything. I just want to take a nap on the couch.
And you know what? I did the same. I ate so much food for breakfast. It was
my gosh.
We went to one of my favorite restaurants, and I pretty much ordered everything except for thank you, please come again. Like that was the only thing we didn't get. My wife is like, I want 2 of these appetizers, and the waitress looks at us like with raised eyebrows, like, Are you sure?
And I'm looking at her like chickens and a Coke.
Damn near, sir. Damn near. And I was like, okay, time out. I'm hungry, but let's walk this back a little, shall we? Oh my gosh. By the time we got home, I'm like, all right, it is nappy time. That's it. Oh yeah. Yeah. Oh my goodness.
That is good stuff.
It was a fantastic, and let's not forget, I think we should as well acknowledge the sacrifice that the man they call Tim is making here. He has had even though he had today off, he made we both actually had planned on seeing Top Gun Maverick a while ago, and then both of us ended up seeing it this afternoon in true like idiotic fashion. Like we're doing our homework late for the podcast. We don't even make money off
for the show.
cramming for the show that makes us not even $1. I mean,
Nope.
We're on brand at all times. I just want people to know this. But after doing that, watching Top Gun, then going to Top Golf, which is kind of baffling to me, he then presided over his HOA meeting with an iron fist, I imagine, just and has come straight from there. I imagine he's still wearing the barrister robe and the wig that he wears, even though it's totally not required, but he
still
does it anyway.
Wig on, baby.
You know, it's a bit askew because he ran from the rec center. Or do you just set it up in your living room and have people come in and
come on, man! It's down in the basement. I got a corner of the basement, so it's all mine.
So I'm picturing like the Godfather's office. Like it's really dark. People are walking in. HOA president, I ask for justice.
Michael. Santino.
My boy. Look what they did to my boy.
My boy.
That's a lawn jockey, Tim. It's my boy. Oh my gosh, he's into the bourbon again. All right, smack him around. We need to finish this meeting.
He's cut off.
The only HOA meetings with an open bar, ladies and gentlemen. It just makes me want to pick up and move to Chicago, quite honestly, just to be able to see one of these things.
We take you.
Oh well, I would hope so. I would hope that I wouldn't have to grease too many palms, being having it in with a prez. Indeed. I would hope that I'd be able to get in there.
Indeed.
All right. Before we get into our main subject, though, we need to get into the Week in Geek because Tim is the man they call it. Tim has a loaded slate for us. Even though there's 2 items, they are heavy hitters. So, what do you got for us here in the Week in Geek?
The Week in Geek.
Feels so funky.
Well, my friend, we have a couple items. One is Ghostbusters related. One of them is wrestling related. So the two ends of the spectrum, ladies and gentlemen.
These are a few of my favorite things.
Very nice. Very nice.
Thank you.
The Ghostbusters one's kind of just a quick, did you know, or what's the NBC one?
The More You Know.
The More You Know. Thank you. But basically, this is from slashfilm.com, which was referencing back to a 2005 interview from NPR's Terry Gross on
As
her
usual,
show.
We're very timely. I love this.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah. Hey,
here's this thing that happened like 15, 17 years ago.
It's Slash Film. They did it, and now I am simply parroting it. I'm promoting their content, if you will.
All right. I'm not sure if that makes it any better, but proceed.
Well, really what it has to do with is the impact that Harold Ramis had on the original Ghostbusters script. And really the summary of the article is when Gross asked Ramis about some of the changes he made, he went into some detail about how the original script had the story start where the Ghostbusters were already kind of an established thing in New York City, and there were lots of them, and he kind of compared it to like the Orkin Man, like they're just another kind of pest removal, sort of service, and he didn't feel that was right. He thought that it might be a more interesting take for the audience, to see the process of how the Ghostbusters evolved, to see the idea of them starting as paranormal academics and kind of their first contact with the supernatural, and kind of taking them from that skeptical place to just kind of walking them into like the realm of if this were to happen, this is how it could be, sort of thing, and taking the audience on the trip with them. Rather than coming into the story and having it just be a thing that the audience has to kind of just come into, cold turkey sort of thing. Yeah. So it was just kind of interesting to understand like how it was really his sort of brainchild to kind of, take the concept of what they were doing and really kind of tell an origin story through simplicity. He this article kind of brings that out. And like, if you think of the first Star Wars film, it's A New Hope is much simpler than the later ones. Same thing with Iron Man. Iron Man is when you really get down to it, Iron Man's a very simple film. It's Tony Stark in a cave, Tony Stark out of the cave, Tony Stark makes his, suit, Tony Stark goes and beats up the bad guys, but it's an origin story, and it tells, the evolution of a character through that origin, through that simplicity. duplicity. And so I just thought it was kind of interesting to hear that, Ramis kind of applied a very similar concept to Ghostbusters, where Aykroyd originally had them, in the universe or in the reality of that universe, doing their work, doing their thing, and trying to start the story there. And rather, Ramis came along and turned it into an origin story where we kind of go along for the ride with them as they kind of uncover this, supernatural thing going on in New York. So thought it was kind of cool. And that's really the gist of it. But wanted to get your thoughts on Mr. Ramis's contributions.
Well, I mean, first of all, it makes a lot of sense that that Harold would have to come in and kind of rein in Mr. Aykroyd because Dan, big thinker, shall we say. Famously, when he handed in the Blues Brothers script, it was so thick that he actually took the cover of a phone directory and used that as the cover for the script because it was so thick. Because he had included like background story on all of the members of the band and like dossiers on all of the stuff that was going on and all of these things, to the point where there was a famous cut scene from Blues Brothers where when they park the car, it was in this like electrical transformer shed. And that was Dan Aykroyd's explanation for how the car was able to do all these incredible things. Was because it had been in this high voltage shed absorbing this radiation and electricity and all this stuff. And what was it? It was John Landis was the director of Blues Brothers, right?
Yes. Yep.
And he was like, "That's great, Dan. If you want to go to every single theater for every single showing and explain that to them, that's fantastic. However, it's just a magic car. It's just a magic car. It does the things because we say they do the things."
Yeah.
And that was the end of it. So it kind of makes sense. I will say it is interesting because I can see that story working from both perspectives because it really comes down to telling that origin story, like you said, which in a way becomes much more character driven because you're focusing in on those characters and following them from the jump.
Right.
Right. Or I mean, not from like the beginning of their lives, but the beginning of their lives in this story. And you get the traditional, like you see the life before, and then as things develop and all that. But there also is this idea of, just assuming the world. And, in a way, I can understand doing that as well. And I think one of the reasons why Iron Man was a very smart way to kind of kick off the MCU is because they didn't do a whole lot of assumption of superheroes in that world. They didn't really concern themselves. They did. They, like you say, it was a very simple story and they focused in on that and kept a very tight lens on that.
Very grounded.
And mostly it was just because like, if we can just get people to believe in this guy, okay, now we can move on to the next thing. Because it doesn't, if this guy, if they don't believe in this guy, it doesn't matter what the next movie is going to be. And this is the thing that DC has infamously managed to just F up at every turn when they're making movies. They just don't focus on that character. It's always about what's coming next.
Yeah.
And that'll blow it every time. However, I would make an argument, a slight disagreement with you in the example of episode 4. Now, true, it is simple when compared to, the movies that follow it. However, it is actually an example of the assumption of that world. You're tossed into the middle of that story, literally, because Lucas had the backstory of how, the first 3 episodes of this, this saga were. The prequel. He already had that in mind. So there really is this presumption of, okay, this world exists and you're kind of starting at the beginning of these characters, but this world as it is has existed and has been going on for quite a long time before this. So here you are, boom, catch up.
Yeah.
And you can make that easier or not easy depending on, in some ways, like what the story dictates, and also kind of how sadistic you are as a storyteller. Like there's definitely in some cases, like there is some merit to like being kind of a little bit rough with a reader or a viewer and just being like, no, come on, you can't walk in this ride. You got to run. Come on, hustle a little bit, work for it. And to go along with it, and it works for some people, it doesn't work for others.
I should qualify just real quick. I should qualify the simpler also in this article. What he was saying was keeping things simpler is a much easier way to connect with an audience than trying to establish a complex world.
It is, and also it's also cheaper.
Indeed,
because you don't have to show all these other things, and that's very important because Ghostbusters was not capital G Ghostbusters at that point. It was this movie they were trying to, to get off the ground. And famously, like we're desperate enough to get Bill Murray. They're like, hey, sure, we'll fund your vanity project. Just come and do this thing because we know that you're, in the immortal words of Vince, you're going to draw me money.
That's right.
Bill Murray is a name. We need another name, and it worked. So yeah, no, I think it's great, and I think Harold Ramis was one of those guys that he was really funny but also pragmatic.
Yes.
And he could really kind of see through those things. And some people just see how, almost like people who are really mechanically inclined, and they just look at an engine. And even though they might not be a car mechanic, they can look at an engine and go, okay, so this here, oh, I think the problem might be over here. And sure enough, it's like, oh yeah, that thing. How did you know that? Well, I mean, it just kind of follows that this is the way this works, and they can see that. And some people see story and story in a movie context or a book context or whatever. Man, they just have that engineer's mindset of being able to look at the problem and go, oh, I can't tell you exactly what it is, but I think it's over here.
Yeah.
Let's look at that area because I think that's where the problem is. And he seemed really good at that, and a fantastic writer in his own right as well.
Mm-hmm. So we have much to thank Mr. Ramis for, because without his intellectual contributions, we may have had a very different Ghostbusters experience, which would have led to no sequel and no afterlife.
Yeah, and we would also have not had Caddyshack and Stripes, which great argument to be made that those three movies right there, Ghostbusters, Caddyshack, and Stripes, three of the funniest movies ever made.
Oh, yeah. Agreed. Give me the Billy Baroo.
Oh, yeah. Sergeant Holka, you're our big toe. Lighten up, Francis.
Oh, boy. Well, moving from the world of Ghostbusters comedy, tomfoolery, and ballyhoo. Well, we'll keep the ballyhoo as we move over to wrestling.
Yes.
But I have termed this segment the terrible, horrible, no good, very bad month in wrestling.
Yes. If you happen to be a wrestling fan, I'm just going to advise you right now, pause, get yourself a drink. I'm actually considering doing it right now when I ain't got a dog in this fight, because I've been watching AEW or WWE for a long time now. I'm just looking at this list, and I feel like
painful.
Honestly, I just want you to run down the litany. Like,
okay.
We'll comment on things that you want to afterwards. Just give this rundown of what's happened in the last month.
All right.
No commentary. Just run it down for us and see if we make it to the end while we're still alive.
Okay. So for AE, so really there's the category of injuries, and so for AEW, right now we have injuries to Bryan Danielson now. Gosh, I always get that screwed up.
Close enough.
CM Punk, which is notable because he was recently crowned the new AEW World Champion. And
now,
then
is his injury severe or is it
he's
kind of
out
one of
for
those?
several months now. They didn't say what exactly it was. It was something either with his foot or with his leg, but it required surgery.
Oh, that's awesome.
But what was unfortunate was he had just won the world title. It was a great story, and I think they were going to continue to roll and expand upon it. and he showed up at the Wednesday Night Dynamite, had a 6-man tag, and came out of it limping. And then it turns out that Friday he had to announce that he's going to go away for a few months to recover. Now they're not stripping him of the title. AEW, to their credit, do not strip their champions of titles. Instead, they go the UFC route and they create an interim champion, such that when the crown champion comes back, they inevitably have a pay-per-view match already kind of written, story written and booked, ready to go between interim and reigning champion to determine who the man is. So when he returns, CM Punk will face that interim champion. But he was pretty emotional about it too. I mean, like, not putting a show on, he was pretty broken up because he's like, this, like, he's been since he came back in August, it's been such a great ride with him and what he's been doing, working with the younger guys, the stories he's been telling, him and MJF. Oh my gosh. I mean, he's just done some amazing work. So this was unfortunate, but we hope Mr. Punk returns soon. But he is on the shelf as it is right now. Jeff Hardy on the shelf. Will return to Mr. Hardy in a moment. He actually shows up again later in the list.
Let's just put a pin in that one, shall we?
We shall. And then Adam Cole, baby, he is also injured as well. So
Adam
AEW
Cole, boo instead of baby.
Indeed. And then over in WWE, not as many injuries, but they are impactful. I included a picture in our show notes that I had to take out because it just ruined the spacing, but it had Roman Reigns and Brock Lesnar as old men facing off in like SummerSlam in 2050, because that's how many different iterations of Lesnar Reigns we're going to get. But apparently Randy Orton suffered a back injury, and he was tabbed to be Reigns' next opponent at SummerSlam. However, he is out for what is believed to be the rest of 2022. So unfortunately, he will be out, which is now forcing the creative, the creative intellects at WWE to go and try something new and different with Reigns. So they're going to put him with Lesnar for the 400 or I have listed here the 547th time. So that'll be the SummerSlam main event. Looking forward to that. Just in general.
Oh, jeez,
just crazy. So you feel bad. Orton probably would have had a good run with Reigns, but nonetheless, he is out. Cody Rhodes. We'll touch upon him later on as well in the and another thing, but Cody Rhodes suffers a torn pectoral muscle clear off the bone, from what I hear. So he has this injury. Now, apparently, once this happens, you cannot do any further damage to the body or to that area because the muscle is torn from the bone.
Yeah.
Well, that's all he needed to hear, because he went ahead and competed at the Hell in a Cell match last Sunday, or 2 Sundays ago, against Seth Rollins. So he did a Hell in a Cell match with a torn pectoral muscle. And you should have, I actually watched this match last week. The crowd goes not silent, but in this like, whoa sort of mode when he takes his jacket off and you see how bruised and just swollen his side is.
Yeah.
It was bad. It was really bad.
Then to have Rollins like digging a chair into that area.
My gosh.
And it wasn't a short match. It was like a 20 some odd minute match.
Yeah. They had a classic match, and I'll get into it later, but he is now out for much of 2022 recovering. He had surgery shortly after this match to repair the torn pectoral muscle. The unfortunate thing there is he was picking up a lot of great support from the fan base, really strong babyface character, and building off a brilliant story of him trying to win the title that his father couldn't quite get, and it's just such a compelling story the way they're telling it. It's one of the rare things they're doing well in that company. So it's unfortunate, but if anything, it opens the door for a Royal Rumble return that could cause the place to come unglued. So I'm looking forward to seeing what lies forth for the American Nightmare. we move on from injuries to just general discontent and craziness. Sasha Banks and Naomi walked out of Raw several weeks ago, not caring for the creative direction their characters were going in. They were the ladies tag champs. They said, "Nah, we're dropping the belts. We're walking out the door. Goodbye." Thank you. So they left, and
Exactly.
we now believe Sasha is the rumblings are she is going to be released from WWE. They are going to part ways with her given the circumstances there. This is not the first time this has happened. There's been these sorts of issues with her before creatively, and quite honestly, I don't blame her. Given the rumors you read about in the company and that sort of thing, a lot of issues with creative. But again, I won't go too crazy on this. We'll get through the list and then talk. So she's going to be released. Unfortunately, Jeff Hardy last week arrested for DUI. So again, having some issues in
almost
the
for
addiction.
the 547th time is
Sadly,
good
but
Lord.
Yeah. But ironically timed with the fact he was injured, so I don't know if there's a connection there or not, but unfortunately, he is going through that. And so, hopefully he's getting the help he needs and getting back onto he's been on the right path before. Hopefully he gets back on it again. And then we move from that into Stephanie McMahon. She announces an indefinite leave of absence from WWE in her executive role. And then there are some rumors that come out shortly after this happened in May about maybe not being able to fulfill her duties well. It was very strange. The company plugged some people in for what she was doing, and it just had a very strange vibe to it. Well, we may understand why a little bit more now, because Vince last week is now embroiled in a brouhaha of sorts where he is being investigated for, I believe it's misuse of funds. I don't know if that's 100% on the money, but basically using some funds to pay off a lady who he was having an affair with. And so he is stepping down as CEO, but never fear, fans. He is still well in control of creative.
Oh, good. Thank goodness for that.
Good gosh.
Hang on a second. Let me pop a seltzer over that one. Oh.
I would rather him stay as CEO and step back from creative. that would be the best. But
like Mick and the boys said, you can't always get what you want.
No, you can't. But ironically, with him stepping down as CEO, Stephanie is now stepping in as interim chairwoman and CEO. So kind of makes you wonder if maybe her leave of absence might have been related to this. Of course, there's no reporting or anything that has confirmed any of that. But my goodness, sir, that's a lot of activity for a 3 to 4 week span. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah. I mean, the one thing is that it's keeping all these all the wrestling YouTube channels hopping. As a matter of fact, Uncle Corny, as a matter of fact, was like over the past couple of weeks has been like breaking news, almost like he's on a sports talk station. Like as they're recording, things are happening and they're running it by him, and he's reacting in real time. Which, I mean, good God, one can only imagine what the things coming out of his mouth in real time when he doesn't have a moment to think about it. It's insane, dude. Insane stuff going on.
It's crazy. And I go back to that injury list, and it almost reads like the Niles Crane list. It's like Bryan Danielson, thank you. CM Punk, thank you. I mean, it was just like crazy. Yeah. They're just like dropping like flies. I mean, it's just like, what is going on?
I will say AEW, that is a great idea that they have, having the interim champ, and then of course it gives you that time to kind of figure things out, and then boom, like you say, a ready-made program for when the champ comes back. Such a great idea, and it seems foolish that it has not been done before.
Yeah.
But of course, because it makes sense, I mean, that's probably the reason why WWE didn't do it. And
run as far away as you can from the common sense.
Yeah, and most definitely why WCW back in the day didn't do it. Because God, no. Good Lord. All those are terrible. I mean, but of course, it's hard to feel bad for WWE. And I say this separate from all the Vince stuff going on right now, but because they simply do not try to build new stars. They haven't been for a long time. They've been leaning on these guys, and now you have what? You have Roman Reigns, who's now part-time. Lesnar is part-time. I mean, he's not really a full-time guy because he kind of comes and goes whenever he wants because he can. And he knows how valuable he is. And after that, who do you got? I mean, you've got some really talented wrestlers on that roster. You've got AJ Styles. You got, I mean, I don't even know who else is left on there. But I mean, they've always had some really talented people. It just winds up they don't do anything with them, and then they get caught like this, and they just, they just run back to, oh well, what worked 3 years ago? Well, we've already seen that, and it doesn't even make any sense. So it's like, it's hard to feel bad for him in those circumstances. I mean, I feel bad for Cody. That was a dude who's coming back and, like you said, just getting traction and freaking, of all things, like, rips the pectoral muscle off of his bone lifting weights. Like, it wasn't even in the ring.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which it makes me think of there was a Patton Oswalt bit that showed up on my Facebook. Yeah, I'm still on Facebook because I'm old. Where he talked about how he had broken his foot. And he says, it happened in two parts. The second part is that I stepped off the curb and I landed wrong and I broke my foot. He says, the first part was I turned 50. Now that I'm 50, everything is fatal. And he just goes off on the fact that, like, everything is going wrong. And he's like, but then, apparently he's friends with Tony Hawk, which I'm like, okay, those two don't really seem like they would pal around, but sure. And I guess Tony Hawk broke like his fibula or like something really gnarly, like, while he's skateboarding, and he texts Patton Oswalt. He's like, yeah, I guess we're in the same boat, buddy. And he's like, Patton Oswalt's like, no, we're not. No, we're not. Like, you Jackie Chan'd yourself into some really cool stuff. Like, I stepped wrong. That's all it was. Like, we're not in the same boat whatsoever. So, I mean, you got to feel bad for Cody Rhodes because it's like, of all the that sucks, but WWE is kind of in a bed of their own making, creatively speaking, because this is what they do. They lean on these couple guys, and then something happens with them, and it's like, oops, now what?
Yeah.
I mean,
I will say the one thing with, and I'm probably ruining my and another thing, but I'll say this about the Cody thing. He comes out of Hell in a Cell. I mean, he is just building his legend in a way that few people have an opportunity to do. And not that I consider an injury an opportunity, but the fact that he and Rollins crafted a match where they could do the things they did, even though he was injured, and put on the kind of just the psychology of the match was just fantastic.
It is an opportunity. I mean, you have to look at it that way. I mean, because if in that business, especially, like, because your options are, like Mick Foley famously said, like, if you're in a legit sport and Shaquille O'Neal falls down and he's bleeding all over the court, they stop the game.
Yeah.
But in the fake sport, if something like that happens, you got to finish. Like, you've got to finish the match. Like, how many times have we seen stuff like that? And because of the nature of the sport of the game, like, it is an opportunity, and he took it and ran with it. And I mean, my God, he deserves a ton of credit for doing that. And I mean, probably also maybe a psych evaluation as well. I don't know. I can't say it's what I would do, but then again, I've never been the person who's like, you know what, I want to get hit in the face for a living.
Yeah,
I just apparently that's just not in my nature.
Yeah. But his aura as a babyface and what I see happening with him is interesting because, when he came back, he's coming back with this idea of, my dad won the WWE title by count out in Madison Square Garden this one time, and he had to give the title back because you can't win that way.
Yeah.
He's like, so his whole mission is that he wants to win the championship for the family that just seemed to elude his father. And with him doing what he did in that match, it's like he's creating his own kind of legend now. You know what I mean? Like he's working with the Dusty Magic, but he's kind of working outside the realm of it. You know what I mean? Like creating his own legacy, creating his own, really, really building the American Nightmare character into something that is really different from his father, even though it's tangentially related to it. You know what I mean? Which I think is really cool. And that's not to say, what he did in AEW doesn't matter. I mean, he had a couple of brutal matches. I mean, he was in a Flaming Tables match about 8 months ago where his back was on fire, for crying out loud. And, he still has some of the burn marks to show. I mean, he just does some crazy stuff. And, but as fans, you can't deny the toughness. You know what I mean? Like it just builds the aura of who he is by the fact that he does these, these aren't these insane Foley-esque sort of things. Like there's a reason for it in the match and in the story, but the fact that he went in, injured this way and gutted his way through it and, had the match with Rollins it's one of the few bright spots. And honestly, where I see this all going, and I hope this is where it's going, is having him be the one that unseats Reigns, having these two guys from these two families, these two legacies that they come from, battling it out, where one of them has been dominating for so long and one of them is kind of the underdog babyface. I really think they've got some magic. That's a match I would watch. Reigns versus Rhodes. I think that would, the Samoan contingent against the American Dream, baby. So.
And the thing is, I love the idea. I think it's money. It's money in the bank. It just start printing tickets now, which means that inside of 3 months, Reigns is going to be defeated by Omos on SmackDown for the title, and that's what's going to happen.
Main event, baby, main event.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because Vince is like, oh, listen, pal.
But we have 2 more weeks of June, so we'll see what other tomfoolery ballyhoo takes place in the world of wrestling. It seems like there can't be much more that could go wrong, but buckle up, kids. We'll see.
As we were talking about in the pre-production meeting, now, in addition to all of this stuff, all the tomfoolery happening with Vince, there is the possibility of a pending lawsuit representing shareholders. Because now, I mean, because let's face it. I mean, so Vince has got himself caught in the gears here because of an inappropriate relationship that he then hushed up and paid to go away, and now they're looking into whether this has happened before. And I gotta say, like I said to you earlier this week, like I don't think it's going to take too much digging to find times that this has happened before. I mean, this is a guy who's been in absolute control of his empire for how long? And it would not shock me. Let's just put it that way. It would not shock me that if there are more allegations. Number one, John Laurinaitis, who's part of this whole thing, like he's already under the bus. Like they threw him under the bus real quick, and he's going to be dragged cross country. I mean, he's done. He is done. Vince, on the other hand, so I gleaned a lot of this information from Uncle Corny's latest podcast, which is interesting just to listen to because, oh my gosh, he tears into this stuff on a level that I will not hear because it's a family show. But apparently the paralegal, the woman who's got the NDA and the $3 million, was a 40-something paralegal hired and was paid $100,000 salary her first year with the company. The second year, her salary was doubled to $200,000 while she's having this relationship with Vince. And then apparently at some point, she was handed off from Vince to John Laurinaitis as like a plaything. And then at some point after that, it was like, okay, here's $3 million. And sign this NDA and just go away. Now, apparently I don't know if more has come out, but from what Corny was saying, the $3 million was out of Vince's pocket. The issue might be the fact that a year into her tenure with the company, they decided to double her salary. For what reason?
Yeah.
Like how good of a job are you doing as a paralegal where you go from 100,000 to 200,000 in 1 year? Like that's one hell of a year-end review. So there's that. Plus you got to get I wonder at what point do you get to where Vince can finally get removed because I just looked this up because I was curious what the ownership deal was, because WWE is a publicly traded company now. You got stockholders, you got a board of directors, you've got some manner of oversight. So Vince holds 38.6% ownership of the company's outstanding stock and 81.1% of the voting power. I don't understand how that works, how you hold 38, almost 39% of the stock, but yet you hold 81% of the voting power. I'm not sure how that works.
Yeah.
But I'm going to imagine there is some way that he can get pushed out of this, or at least pushed so far into the background. Like he is not going to be, because now it's not just his money anymore. Like now he's messing with other people's money.
Yeah.
And, I always joked about we were never going to be rid of Vince McMahon. We were going to have his head in a jar, like some sci-fi horror movie, and it would live on forever. Well, they're coming for Vince's head, but they might also be coming for his ass at this point. Like there's going to be two body parts they're after right now.
Yeah. I did.
It's kind of crazy. I mean, how much more do you think it's going to take before this happens? Because now, if they get Stephanie in there, is the case of like, well, McMahon by any other name, as long as the last name is right, we'll calm down the stockholders, we'll get the old man out of the way, and everything is going to be fine.
Yeah. I did read that, that he has most of the voting power. What I also gleaned from that article I was reading, though, was there is power in the networks. And so the thought is, can the network executives, like if it goes to a very awkward place, can the network executives force him out by basically saying, because quite honestly, without the network deals, that is a lot of the WWE's, inflow of cash at this point. And so, if they jeopardize those relationships, that could do a lot of damage to those executives staying behind as well as the shareholders. So, so there are some. It sounds like there are some levers that can be pulled, but it is going to be, I think, kind of a tricky thing.
Yeah, it's just crazy when you think about it. The fact that after all these years, like the one person whose job you felt was. Actually, well, let's think about it this way. Two people who you thought coming into 2022 who had almost unlimited job security, Roger Goodell and Vince McMahon.
Mm-hmm.
One, because, he gets paid an ungodly amount of money just to take hits for the league, and nobody likes him, and he gets booed every year at the draft and smiles about it because, he's laughing all the way to the bank. And Vince McMahon, because he owns a damn company, well, kinda, and he's been doing this for 50 years. And now, we already talked about the whole Gruden thing with Goodell, where it's like he might have become enough of a liability. Kind of the same with Vince. Like he might be enough of a liability that it's finally like, okay, you know what? Why don't you go take up golf or something?
Yeah.
Have you thought about shuffleboard as like a full-time job? Like really pursue it, Vince. Like you could be really good at this,
Yep.
Wow. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy town.
And before we wrap up, I forgot two other things over the weekend. Dave Hebner.
Oh, jeez. Oh, yes. Dave Hebner and
Tim White, both
Tim
referees, famous referees from the 80s and 90s. Dave Hebner, most famously being from the Evil Twin storyline that took place when Andre defeated Hulk Hogan, which is just so nonsensical.
The evil Hebner.
which I watched a clip of that over the weekend, and in watching the theatrics of Hogan back in the day and this whole thing where it's just he must be the Evil Twin because he socked the other one in the mouth. It was just like,
yeah.
And then Hogan making the money sign with his hands, like, oh, he must have taken the money. I'm like, man, you've really made some leaps in your detective work there, Mr. Clouseau.
Well, they didn't give him a movie for no reason. Well, actually, they kind of did.
Oh, good Lord.
They were just like, hey, sure, why not?
But
rip them.
Absolutely. Rough May, June for the wrestling world. And we will see if this week calms down a bit. But my goodness, my friend.
I got to tell you, my money is not on it calming down. My money is on this thing going full bore loco by the time we hit July.
Uncle
That's
Todd
what I'm rooting for.
Arrives on chaos, and he is giggling and laughing as this takes place. So,
in a way, yeah. It's horrible to watch people's lives kind of crumble, but at the same time, it's almost like it's a car wreck. It really is. Yeah. And at least here I don't feel guilty, but because my rubbernecking is not slowing anybody else down. It's only harming me. So I guess it's my guilty little pleasure.
Indeed. And that, my friends, is a very wrestling focused, with a little bit of Harold Ramis, week in Geek.
Well, thank you once again, sir, for taking us down these little rabbit trails and actually, no, don't. I can't thank you for that. Like that, now I'm just miserable. Like just knee deep in misery. My gosh, it's like I feel like I'm in the never-ending story, and the horse has just gotten sucked down. It's like, what's the world coming to? Well, thankfully, Tom Cruise is here to save the world with his I don't know, the lifts in his shoes or something. But so as I mentioned before, we are going to be talking about Top Gun Maverick, the sequel that we've been waiting 36 years for, including 2 years wait of just COVID time.
Yeah,
because of all the movies that got delayed, I'd have to say this one was the most snake bitten. Because it was actually it would have made it out ahead of COVID. But then it got pushed back into what became COVID time. And then I think it got pushed back a couple more times. Like the fact that this thing just didn't wind up premiering on Paramount Plus with them just going, screw it, is almost amazing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So we both signed up for the nostalgia trip and saw it today. And, I got to say, first reaction from you, sir. What were you thinking? How did you feel about the Top Gun Maverick?
Well, as I was explaining to Uncle Todd before we started the show here, it's been kind of funny going to the movies, and we've seen Jurassic World, we've seen a few other movies over the last few weeks, and when we would go, there would be these not trailers, but just sort of behind the scenes content for different movies. And one of them was Top Gun, and Cruise is sitting there talking about all the stuff they did and the training regimen he developed with the Navy people and all this sort of thing. And my wife and I just kind of came out of it. We're just like, man, if he isn't just like the most smarmy, pretentious person acting like he knows all this stuff about, and he probably does. I mean, I don't mean to say that he doesn't, but let's be honest. He's an actor at the end of the day. I mean, once he finishes Top Gun, I don't think he's out flying the P-75s or whatever it is they trained on, like he's talking about.
He actually is a pilot, apparently.
Oh, okay. Well, it shows how much I've been doing my research.
Well, I granted, my only research was from the IMDB trivia section of Top Gun Maverick. So,
well, I don't feel so bad now.
as we all know, that is the fount of all things good and true in this world. But the first item is that Tom Cruise is a pilot.
All right.
And the P-51, the propeller fighter plane, at the beginning of the movie and then also at the very end, that is his plane. He owns that.
Okay.
So, I mean, there is
so maybe
something...
not as pretentious as I thought.
Well, the funny thing is, like, so I read back a little bit on the trivia from the original Top Gun, because that was like really, that was kind of Tom Cruise's like big coming out as a movie star. Like he had been in some big movies before that, but that was really his big come out in terms of also being really involved in the production. And having a hand in it. Like he actually had a little bit of weight behind him at that point, so he could kind of say, I did this and this and this. But that was where he had never ridden a motorcycle before, and they put him on like the fastest production motorcycle on the planet, which I'm like, oh my gosh, this stuff, like, this is insanity. Like, and then of course he ends up becoming a pilot, because of course he does. Because by the power of Xenu, that's how I picture it, like Tom Cruise in Scientology, almost like a He-Man sort of thing. Like he pulls out a magic sword and he's like, by the power of Xenu, I've got this whole Scientology thing like down pat, man. I know
Sounds like it.
front and back. But yeah, so there's part of me that actually thinks that like Tom Cruise has gone loco enough that he actually does think that like in some corner of his mind that he is Pete Maverick Mitchell. So
Yeah.
I mean, when you're telling me this, like, because I've seen bits of that, but I can see like after going to a couple different movies and seeing that repeatedly, where you'd be like, you know what? I just want to kick this guy right in the freaking teeth.
Yes.
Yeah, like the Geneva Convention should prevent you from having to see that more than twice. Like if you see that a third time, you should be able to file a complaint and like have someone taken to the Hague for war crimes. That's just my contention. I'm a bit of a hardliner on that one.
Well, setting aside the pre-movie content, my initial reaction to the movie itself was one of surprise, honestly. I came in, as I said to Uncle Todd, this movie had 3 strikes going against it, probably 4. One, it was a sequel. 2, it was, based on a movie from like 30 years ago. 3, it was Tom Cruise. 4, you had Miles Teller in there. Not that I have anything against Miles Teller.
You really got it out for Miles Teller, because in the pre-production meeting, you were like, you threw this offhanded remark like, he's a mixed bag. I'm like, damn, what did Miles Teller ever do to you? Like, I didn't know who this guy was.
I didn't mind him in Whiplash, but I mean, I don't know. I mean, it's a little bit of a hot cold thing for me with him. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So
I just find it interesting because there's these guys, like these people who just out of nowhere, like the man they call Tim is one of the most upstanding, empathetic, just lovely human beings I've ever met in my life, and just out of nowhere, sometimes like screw this person in particular, like what? Where'd that come from? Like, did they kick your
Grandpa
dog or
Simpson
something?
shaking his fist at the sky?
It just catches me off guard every single time because I'm like, whoa,
where did that come from?
There's some shade going on here that I don't know about.
Did he spill your bourbon glass at some point? What did he do to you?
Well, in that case, totally justified. I get it.
But nonetheless, no, but I was very pleasantly surprised by this movie. I have the luxury. I had admitted probably many episodes ago, and finally came around to watching the first Top Gun a couple of weeks ago on a streaming service.
I don't think that made it into. I don't think that was on a show. That was when we were talking about this off air, and I was shocked that you had never seen the OG Top Gun.
No. So I watched it, and honestly, I came away feeling like this movie was better than the first one. That it had a more complete story to it, that it was really hitting some really good notes when it came to the characters and the emotion, and of course a lot of it built off the first movie, but it was just this rare case of me feeling like this sequel felt more complete, from beginning to end, than the first movie did. Because when I saw the first movie, I kind of finished it and was like, okay, I get why it was so, in some ways I understood why it was so popular back in the 80s, but in other ways I'm watching this like, there's some areas where there's just the story so thin, you know what I mean? Like it feels like there's just like nothing there. And I'm like, why were people so like over the moon about this thing? You know what I mean?
So
It was
Weffa thin.
Oh my gosh. I mean, if I had to listen to Take My Breath Away one more time, I was going to
dude. So the funny thing is with that song, like they fell for that song in a big bad way. So that's why it gets used like approximately every 30 seconds.
I mean, well, wait a minute. But before you go any further, though, I have to say, just to support what you're saying, to the point where, and this is in the first Top Gun, mind you, to the point where when, like, I think one of the parts is where he's departing from his girlfriend's house or something, and he climbs on the motorcycle, and just all of a sudden they start like midstream in the song.
Oh yeah.
And I'm like, why? He's leaving.
Yep. Oh no, I mean, and the thing is, like, I get it. I get what you're saying, because I had recently watched. Well, I can't say that I watched. I kind of flipped through Top Gun.
Okay.
So I watched the parts that I liked, and then I kind of would just skip a bunch of the parts where I'm like, I don't really need that. Like, I kind of know where they're going from here to here to here, and so I kind of just watched the highlights. And yeah, like there's a lot of times when you're like, okay, it's kind of just like a Navy recruitment, a vehicle that they strung a story to. And yeah, the story is like incredibly thin in places. And the production, and to me, like not incredibly well planned out too, because they came to the end of production, we're like, oh, hey, we don't have our two love interests having any kind of like romantic interaction. We need to get Kelly McGinnis and Tom Cruise back, who don't like each other, which was great. Probably because, Tom Cruise is like 5'7" with his cowboy boots on, and I think Kelly McGinnis is like 5'10", 5'11".
Yeah.
And so when you see like the Top Gun like promo photos, like, and she's like leaning over him.
Yeah.
And like she's totally slouching, and she's still like over his shoulder, obviously, like obviously taller, like almost in a way like in like a James Callis Trisha Helfer way, where like Trisha Helfer is a legitimately statuesque woman, and James Callis is not a statuesque man. And of course, they've got Trisha Helfer and BSG. They've got her on like those 6-inch freaking stiletto heels. So now she's like towering over him. But it's like Wilt Chamberlain standing over like Bob Cousy back in the day, like just 2 feet over him.
Oh my gosh!
But of course, I think James Callis is a little bit more secure about his height, or just like me, has just developed this thing of like, I ain't hitting another growth spurt, so it is what it is.
Yeah.
Tom Cruise, not so much. Tom Cruise is like, no, we need to dig a hole so she can stand down in it, or you need to get me a orange crate so that I can stand up on it. Oh my gosh. So yeah, no chemistry there, but they realized they didn't have the romantic scene, so that's why you have that. Like, I guess when they brought him back to reshoot, she'd already changed her hair color and hairstyle for another project, and Tom Cruise was growing out his hair for The Color of Money. So like they had to, like she had to put a baseball hat on, and then the whole like romantic love scene is all like in silhouette and stuff. It's like, ooh, isn't that artsy? It's like, no, they're just trying to hide the fact that these two human beings, one, don't have any chemistry because they don't like each other, and two, look completely different than the rest of the movie. So it doesn't surprise me, like when I go back and look at it now, like, yeah, the movie's kind of spotty, to be quite honest. It's kind of hit or miss in some of these parts.
It is,
but it's one of those things where what's remarkable to me, and I was thinking about it today, was we've had the fourth Matrix movie, which of course didn't have quite the same length of time between its last movie and the new one as Top Gun. But then of course we also had Ghostbusters Afterlife come out recently, and another these movies that are taking place way after their most recent movie in the franchise. This one here is, I think, the one that benefits the most from it.
Yeah,
because it's given you enough time for, number one, for a bit of nostalgia, like we mentioned in here, to really pull on. But it also has given you a time for stuff to happen to that character that you can reference, and that you can build an actual story on.
Yeah,
and that was, I think, one of the weaknesses with the first Top Gun movie is you don't have a lot of stuff going on. They hint at a few things, but Maverick is not a especially deep character, and it's just kind of funny. Like it does benefit a tremendous amount from taking place 36 years later.
Yeah.
And it gives you access to all these different elements,
Absolutely. So yeah, for me, it was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. And the funny thing is, like, I saw this bit of trivia too. Like, Tom Cruise is older than Tom Skerritt was when he was playing Viper. And he was like the old man. Tom Cruise is 5 years older than Tom Skerritt was in that movie.
Wow.
Kind of crazy.
That is crazy. What were your initial impressions?
I'm going to agree with you. I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised. And, I enjoyed the movie. And, and yeah, I did. I got the same feeling you did. Like, wow, this story is a lot better than the first one, even though, as we'll talk about a little bit later on, it is kind of, it owes heavily to the first movie, and we hit some of the same notes, but they managed to do it in a way that it actually took me a little while afterwards to realize, like, oh yeah, they kind of did the same thing that they did there, but they did it in a different way. And it kind of, because it actually fit within a story, I didn't care quite as much that they were ringing that same bell. But no, I enjoyed the flick, I gotta say.
Yeah, and I'll get more into the story part, but I feel like they did mine a couple of gems from it. Like, it feels like they took some really good stuff from the first movie and brought it into the second movie, and I think that is what made the second movie resonate and, you know, feel like a strong outing. Is when you have those gems coupled with a strong story. Then you've got something special.
Yeah, agreed. So the first thing that I kind of want to hit on here, because this was our first intro to this movie, was first of all, best teaser trailer of the last decade or best teaser trailer ever for this flick. And here I'm referencing the initial teaser trailer when we had like Tom Cruise flying over the desert and the Ed Harris voiceover, which was just, 30 years, runs off all the things, but you should be a 2-star admiral by now, but here you are, Captain. And just like that Ed freaking Harris voice where you're just like, damn it. He just has that voice that just works, and it's great. And that entire trailer was that teaser was just fan-friggin-tastic, Oh man, that was so good. And then of course they do now, there was like 10 successive trailers after that, and it just kind of got old after a while. But that first one, I remember watching that and going, holy crap, I didn't think this was ever going to be a sequel, and now I really want to see this movie. And I would not have put money on that, before.
Yeah, I don't know that the thought ever crossed my mind about it being like the best teaser trailer, either decade wise or ever, just because there was a skepticism that was kind of built into the fact that it's the sequel. And it just felt like kind of a money grab sort of move by Cruise than it did something with an actual story. Now, this was me thinking through, like seeing this trailer. Gosh, I think I saw this trailer. So this is going to date things. I think I saw this trailer when we went to go see Rise of Skywalker in December of 2019.
Yeah, that would be about right. Yeah.
We were out in your neck of the woods visiting family for Christmas, and we all kind of went out to see the movie together. And yeah, I think that's the first time I saw the trailer, and at that time I had no knowledge of the first movie. I mean, as far as seeing it, and understanding, the story and characters or whatever. So when I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, here we go. Another, let's go through another romp of nostalgia here. So that's kind of, but I mean, I was impressed by the flying sequences, I mean? So I think there was something impressive about it, but I don't think I ever thought about it as, was it one of the best? Because I was kind of checked out of the whole concept kind of from the beginning.
Yeah. I mean, of course I'm engaging in a liberal use of hyperbole here, but to me, it was one of those things that it pulled me in.
Yeah.
Like they managed to hit all the right notes.
I can see it. Oh yeah. Yeah. I could see that.
Much like Mark Bernardin, I'm a sucker for that, one more ride for the old cowboy, or, the hero is going to go out and one more job, that sort of thing. And I'm a sucker for that every time. So yeah, it pulled me in right away.
Nice.
So, of course, now moving on, and we're going to, of course, in most, in Maverick, they talk about, needing 2 consecutive miracles. And, in most, missions, there's a primary objective, there's secondary objectives, there's, then you have a third objective, or, you have tertiary objectives, all that stuff. So first of all, let's run this down here. Did the movie achieve its primary objective? And now here, of course, we're not speaking of grandiose storytelling, building characters, anything like that. Did it draw money? Because we know this is the goal. Like, as much as people want to talk about, and we will talk about how well the movie was made and acted, written, blah, 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 blah. You don't make these movies unless they're going to make money. Like, it's a franchise, and that's all everyone wants right now is the franchise and those dollars. did you know this movie has grossed $885 million worldwide so far as of the recording of this podcast?
Wow. No, I did not.
I mean, we're only a couple weekends in. So it's already the highest grossing movie of 2022, which granted, we're still kind of in COVID movie world. So it's not like it's that great of an achievement. But I mean, this movie's going to make $1 billion. I mean, unless it stalls out really badly, it's going to make $1 billion. And probably could have made a little bit more because I think China's got a serious weed up their butt about the fact that the Taiwanese flag is on Maverick's jacket or something. So it's not playing, I think, in China whatsoever. So this movie could well be over $1 billion right now if it were playing in the Chinese market, but I don't think that's going to happen. But oh my gosh, on a $170 million budget, which is kind of funny when you think about it, because you also have to take it with a grain of salt, because it's like, well, I bet the U.S. Navy's given them a bit of a price break,
yeah,
on some of this stuff, just to help out the cause, maybe. So the one thing I'm kind of curious about, I just want to look this up. So how an F-18? Oh, okay. So an F-18 actually costs $67 million. So you can buy quite a few F-18s for the amount of money that this, at least my math sucks. What, 885 and change? You can start your own Air Force with the money you're making off of Maverick, baby.
Indeed, you could.
That's it. Or, if you're Paramount, you're just basically trying to pay off like your debts from failed projects.
Oh, good Lord.
I mean, there's that too. But yeah, so the primary objective, I'd say they managed to get it. And the funny thing is, like, I'm still on Facebook because I'm old, and I'm on there with a lot of people who are my age, who are nostalgic, and the acclaim for this movie on my friends feed has been kind of funny, like to the point where some people are talking about, like, this is the best movie I've ever seen. I'm like, whoa, pump the brakes there. Come on, like, you need to get, if this is the best movie you've ever seen, you really need to get out more. Like, you need to expand your vision a little bit. Like, it's a good flick. It's a fun flick. Like, the flying scenes were like spectacular and all that. Like, yes, it's a very well made flick, and you can even say it's a great flick for the action genre or whatever. If this is the best movie you've ever seen, whew, I don't know, man. Like,
why do you insult me on this day of my daughter's wedding?
It's like that's the kind of person right there who, Walker Texas Ranger changed their life.
Oh, good Lord. Yep.
You need to get out more. That's all I'm saying. Oh my gosh. But so it's doing pretty well, and people seem to like it.
Yeah.
And it's definitely going to make a billion. So I guess we have to move on to the secondary objective. Did it tell a good story? And I'll defer to you on this one, sir, because you've had the double barrel Top Gun experience of seeing these both for the first time in the last couple of weeks. So how do you think it did in the story?
Yeah, I as I said earlier, I think the story was more complete than the first one. I think the gems that they mined from the first one were, really around, Maverick's relationship with Iceman, which I think was great to see, with Val Kilmer, knowing the health issues and things he's been through. It was great that they found a way to bring him into the sequel, even though it was I don't want to say short-lived, but I mean, his character has a quick end to it, in the way they did it, but they did it in a sensible way. And I thought it was a really great, back and forth they had, even though, a lot of it was Val Kilmer typing stuff as opposed to speaking. I appreciated the fact they did get him to, to have a couple lines and what he said. So that was one gem. And then of course the other gem is just the emotional core of, I think, both of the movies is Goose. And the fact that Goose's shadow is cast, long over the story and these characters, and just the tense, I don't know if you want to call it a relationship, but the tension that exists between Maverick and Goose's son Rooster, and just how they come to bring that to a resolution in the movie was really something I wasn't expecting. I look at the first movie, and that movie is very focused on the program of Top Gun. There's really no mission, to speak of. There's something they go off and do, but there's no mission that they're really training for. And so when when basically in this film there's a mission that they're really trying to carry out and achieve, and I love the fact too that they mention it's a foreign power, but they don't get hung up on the details of it all. Like we don't know what country it is, and quite honestly, we don't care. That's not the point of the movie.
Well, yeah, and that goes back to the first Top Gun as well, where it's a. And that was a very 80s sort of thing too, because
they
Iron Eagle
focused
did the
a lot
same
on
thing.
MiGs in the first one, which is a Russian plane, I believe. So I think it was a little bit of a Russian. We're still in that kind of Russian focus place. The Stallone, the Balboa Drago sort of phase of our culture was going on at that time, I think.
Yeah, but those were also MiGs were also exported to and of course we're spread out across Eastern Bloc countries in Europe, because back then
okay, fair enough,
that was a thing, and they were exported to Middle Eastern countries, I believe, North Korea, places like that. So MiGs were kind of widespread, because that was back when Soviet Union still had a lot of production power going on. So and the funny thing is, like, those fifth generation fighters are Russian made. I believe they're Russian made. It's like Su-57 or something like that. And like with all those, the NATO nickname is like Felon or something like that. And like those are actually legit-ish planes. Like, I don't know if they're exact, replicas of them or whatever. They just put the tail here and make it look cooler, but whatever.
Yeah.
Like I believe those are Russian made planes as well.
Yeah.
But they of course are trying to play around with it, because you don't want to tick anyone off,
right
necessarily, because you're trying to make money on these things.
Absolutely. And so I think they had a great approach there. And then like I felt the story was more centered, because it was really around him teaching them and training them for this mission, and getting to the place where he and so I guess we'll do spoiler alert. I already spoiled something about Val Kilmer's character, but getting to the point where he leads the team, and the real surprise was what happened after. Like, they carry the mission out, but then as with all best laid plans, chaos ensues, and so you have Maverick and Rooster kind of on their own, and there's this whole other side to the story that I just wasn't expecting. I thought once the mission was done, that was going to be kind of the end of the movie, and that would have felt kind of shallow and a little bit sudden. But then they did this extra bit where Mav gets hit, crashes, Rooster saves him, Rooster crashes, and now they're both kind of working together, and then you have just what I thought was just brilliant, the scene where they make a run for the F-14 that is housed at this enemy base, and you have Rooster sitting in his father's seat, and Maverick flying, and just that whole scene was just really cool, given the history that again. So just that idea of taking, just so funny that for a movie that I said had parts that were thin, they did a good job of establishing, that brother relationship that Goose and Maverick had, and the shock of him, dying and that sort of thing in the movie. And then having that be, a point of reconciliation for him with his son. And the fact he was trying to be the best father he could be for this kid, and protect him in the way he needed to, based on, as we found out what his mom's wishes were and stuff, so a lot of the tension was just, Maverick kind of sacrificing in a way, like being the bad guy, because he was trying to do the right thing for the kid. And so, and just by the end of the movie, that they have that understanding and respect for each other. And then it wasn't done in a way where you had some sort of cheesy dialogue or something like that to bring that reconciliation, that it was through, just surviving, a situation together, that there's an understanding and respect that was born, out of that. And so I just thought that was just a brilliant way to tell the story, and just hit on all the right notes. They kept the romance stuff to a minimum. I think, having, except kind of going in a route where you have Maverick kind of, you see he's kind of moving in that direction now of, taking the character to being more of a family man potentially, and kind of having that life outside of flying. I love the fact they brought in a little bit of the technology, the whole speech with Ed Harris talking about how, the future is coming and he's going to be, basically a relic and no longer needed. And I thought, it was just kind of interesting to cast him that way as this pilot who's, kind of almost like a man without a home, sort of thing. And so, I just think top to bottom, they put together a really strong story. I thought it brought together, great threads from the first movie, and then brought them to a great resolution where it really, just kind of left the franchise in just a really good place. And I don't think there needs to be another one. I just think that, it told a story that needed to be told, and in some ways, kind of planted the seed for the next generation, that's going to follow this character. So very strong recommendation for me. Really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll agree. There were a lot of callbacks as I was thinking about the movie afterwards. So I saw it. It was like a 2:00 showing today.
Mm-hmm.
And so then as I was going through the rest of my day and, taking care of this, taking care of that, and I'm thinking about, of course, what I'm going to say on the show as we're recording. And the more I thought about it, I'm like, wow, there is kind of a lot of callbacks to the first flick, like the whole bar thing. Just a lot of references and a lot of things where it's like, okay, yeah, this is kind of the same as this thing and that thing. But they managed to do it in a way that was either different enough or subtle enough that I had to think about it afterwards. Now, granted, I'm sure there's people out there who are listening to this now like, you're a complete idiot. Yep, you're right. It's right there in the title. And I am a person who, when I go to see a movie, I try to turn my brain off. I don't want to be. I'm not the kind of person who wants to try and beat the movie to the conclusion and say, I knew it. Because to me, that's just a waste of your money. Like I want to go there and have the movie wash over me and entertain me. If I the way that I know I'm watching a bad movie is if my brain starts engaging and I'm trying to figure it out, because then I know that I'm just bored senseless. And I didn't do that with this, and so I wasn't really actively trying to think of all those things. And I felt like there was a decent enough amount of chemistry between all of the main characters that it worked.
Yeah.
And I thought that, again, it was very interesting where you see the Maverick character at this point in his life and doing the things that he does. Now, granted, there are plot holes galore, and I'm sure that there are people out there typing their screeds about how, this is completely unrealistic, and that's just a big fat duh. Of course it is. This is not how things work in the real world, because that's not the way that what people want to go to the movies for. You don't want to go to the movies to watch someone's real life. Like you live one of those every damn day. There was an anecdote about when they were filming the original Top Gun, and some of the pilots who were involved I think they might have been some of the pilots who were flying some of the, for the aerial footage or consultants or whatever. And they were saying, hey, the patches on these jackets aren't right. Like those aren't this and that and the other. And Tony Scott was like, we're not making this movie for fighter pilots. We're making it for people in Nebraska, like who aren't fighter pilots. Like it doesn't matter. Like it makes the yarn go better, and so that sort of thing. So you have to kind of ignore the fact that, like, oh yeah, so he's just going to fly the course, and that's going to turn everyone's head, and that'll win the day. Like, that ain't going to work. You know, that's not the way life works. But in the movie, it has to work that way.
Right.
I did like the idea that they wove in Iceman, and the fact that Iceman was basically the guy who's watching out for Maverick all these years.
Yeah.
And that when Iceman, passes away, now he doesn't have his guardian angel anymore.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
mm-hmm.
I did love that aspect of it, and that the fact that he could kind of rely on that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that he would kind of in some ways still be just Maverick, because, hey, my buddy Ice is just going to make sure that I don't get caught in the bandsaw, at any point. That was great. I kind of wish Ed Harris had a little bit more to do in the movie, but then again, I was also a little bummed that we didn't get an aged, what's his name? I'm going to look it up right now because I have to make sure I get this name right.
Tom Skerritt?
No. Tom Skerritt I could do without. I mean, I shouldn't say that. I mean, good Lord. Anytime we get Tom Skerritt.
Are you thinking about the principal from Back to the Future?
Yes. James Tolkien.
Yeah.
It would have been great if at some point we just had just wheeled him out. I mean, I know he would have been retired, but at some sort of ceremony, and just still an unlit stogie in his mouth, just like, you son of a bitch, or just like something like that. I would.
Damn it, Maverick.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Oh, so great. But
sweat pouring from his.
Oh my gosh. Everyone in these movies
amount of sweating in that first movie.
Well, and in this movie too, as soon as in the mission, everybody was getting spritz before every shot, just the sweat pouring down everybody.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I did appreciate that, because even in the scenes when, again, they're in the command center on the carrier, if you notice, what's his face there, Ham, and the other, oh my gosh, what's it? I can't remember his call sign. I want to say it's Cyclone, but I think I'm wrong. I think I'm thinking of a Transformer. But
yeah, I don't remember.
The other guy, the guy who actually seemed to like Maverick a little bit.
Yeah.
They're both very sweaty. Everybody's sweaty in this movie. I was like, my God, there's more sweat in this than there ever was in Rocky. And that had spit buckets full of sweat. It's just it's almost like it's instead of a J.J. Abrams movie where it's more lens flare. It's the guy's running around going, more sweat.
Oh, gosh.
Oh my God. I would hate to be the guy who has to clean the set afterwards. Just going around with a mop afterwards. My God. What the hell? Am I working on the Abyss? What is it? Titanic? What's going on here? But no, I thought the story was good. It was deeper, and I felt, like I said earlier, I think it benefited from that large gap in time from first movie to second movie, because it then allows you a lot of time and a lot of age on the character to kind of endear them a little bit more and wear them in a little bit more. There's more texture there,
Yeah. I did like how they got a little more technical with the flying, and got into some of the, there's a part of me that likes that kind of, a little bit of the science behind it. And they didn't go too deep with it, when it came to either, the test flight he did in the beginning with getting up to Mach 10 or the 10 Gs, that they had to, or the 9G turn they had to pull or whatever, that, I found it interesting to kind of get to, understand that a little bit better, and what what some of the pilots must face, from a physical, standpoint as well. I felt it kind of gave it a human feel, that it wasn't just them performing these crazy stunts and being totally fine. There was, this physical challenge that they had to deal with, as well as, dodging, enemy fighters and enemy, missile launchers and that sort of thing.
Yeah, no, and that was well done. The flying sequences, I mean, absolutely incredible. And of course that's because one of the again, because frickin' Tom Cruise and his, by the power of Xenu, I have the power. One of the contingencies for him doing the flick was that there would be minimal CGI. So when they're showing people in the cockpit, they were throwing those actors in the cockpit and flying and getting their reactions in a plane. Not a plane that they're sitting on the ground with a blue screen behind it that they're jiggling the cockpit around. They're they're actually putting them up there and having them fly real maneuvers and do dialogue and sight lines and all that, which was fascinating to read, like kind of like how they did that. And the fact that they had to have like all the cameras set up in there, and the actors were responsible for starting and stopping the cameras themselves. Because of course they're in the cockpit, the backseat cockpit by themselves. There's no one there to like, there's no little clapboard like, and take, it's like, nope, it's them.
Yeah.
And there's no direct feed. It's not like the director's able to, so they'd send them up for like an hour and a half to do all this work, come down, and then they'd have to watch the footage and see if they got it. Which
Crazy.
I'm like, what an absurd way to make a movie, but at the same time, like absurdly cool as well.
Absolutely.
So I appreciate the fact that like just the madness of that. Like, okay, and of course, Tom Cruise with his alien energy just holding all that together makes total sense. Makes total sense, I tell you.
Nice.
I did like the fact that they brought the F-14 back in at the end. I will admit I was one of those kids. I had like all the airplane books and all that stuff, all the fighter jet books, and to this day, have way too much of information in my brain from those days that is just like tattooed on my, on my cerebral cortex. And the F-14 was always like my favorite fighter jet. It just looked cool, like the variable sweep wings, the dual engines. It just looked badass because it was just like bulky, but yet you knew that thing went like double the speed of sound. It was just this thing where it just looked mean. I love that. So to kind of get that one last ride in the F-14 to me was just like perfect. Like, yes, okay, this is the way the character should go down.
Yeah. Well, and I'll say this about the story too. I mean, I was pretty much convinced that part of the story was just going to be Maverick's dying, have it be a balance to what happened to Goose, and have it be, something where Rooster comes out the other side and, understands Maverick better through, whatever they went through and all this sort of thing. So I was actually surprised that he made it back. I was pretty much convinced, and they did a little bit of setting that up, in the movie. I think they were trying to lead you down that path, but I think that was kind of the beauty of the story, is you could see it being one of those things where, Goose died, as they were doing a training mission, and, Maverick dies in service of, trying to save his son. And I could totally see that play out. Glad they didn't do it. Glad it was, kind of in a different direction, but it was interesting that you had, you didn't really know where it was going to go. And I think that is usually a sign of a good story, because if you can't predict it, then you have to sit back and just let it kind of, just experience it and just let it wash over you, and just kind of see where the author, where the producer takes you, and the director. And they just, I think they did a masterful job with it.
Yeah. Now I do want to point out, there is an insane where did it go? You've got to be kidding me. So
what?
All right. So I clicked on a permalink for IMDB, and this thing has now disappeared. Awesome. But anyway, I remember enough of it that I will idiotically mash my way through this, and people can go to the IMDB trivia page for Top Gun Maverick and read it for themselves. But apparently there is a theory, and I think this was on Vulture, was the reference for it, where the reason that everything is so heightened and so kind of crazy is that the entire movie, or 4/5 of the movie, is Maverick's death dream. That at the beginning, when the plane breaks up, when he's testing the plane, it goes Mach 10, and the plane breaks up, Maverick actually dies there. And that the remainder of the movie is basically like his dream as he's dying.
Oh, interesting.
And that's why, there's a lot of the reconciliation with Rooster, why he ends up flying the mission, why the identity of the rogue nation is not revealed because it's not important, and all this thing, and everything ends happily ever after, and he winds up with, this girl that he's been kind of like dancing in and out of a relationship with for apparently years now. there's the reason why everyone goes home happy is because, Maverick he did, and this is like how he's like his life is flashing before his eyes, and this is how he's reconciling it. So it's bat spit insane, and I'm sure that is not the case, but it's one of those things that afterwards it's like it's interesting how people can weave these theories together from the movie, which is always interesting. But it is it's a little bit tinfoil hat for my taste. So now I think we need to get to a third objective, which kind of fits for the movie, because of course we had the two miracles, but then of course the thing that Maverick had talked about is that getting everybody home. So the third objective here is, did everyone make it home? Do we feel like the characters made a journey? Are we happy with where everyone ends up at the end of the movie? Is it a satisfying conclusion for the characters and where those characters are at the end of the flick? What do you think, sir?
I think so. I don't think they could serve. Well, I think they could. I think everyone made it home from a main to semi-main character perspective. There were some characters, some of the folks on the flight squad who were part of it, but just really didn't have much of a story impact. I don't think anything really happened there, but I feel like, you saw some parallels with at the end, Hangman and Rooster, similar to Iceman and Maverick. You saw, obviously we already talked about Maverick and Rooster and their sort of reconciliation, his situation with Penny and just that kind of future that he's kind of laying for himself with kind of settling down and stabilizing a little bit. I think they kind of addressed a lot of the main things and left these characters in a really good place. From just in terms of relationships and that sort of thing. They couldn't address everything, but I think, I think the primary, and kind of crucial sort of relationships are addressed. So I think they did, kind of land the bird, so to speak, and do it in a really satisfying way and in an emotional way. Especially the hug with Maverick and Rooster, where he thanks him for saving his life, and he makes the comment, he's like, well, I did what my dad would have done, and I mean, again, it just kind of carried that emotional weight, and that hug that they had at the end was just, you just felt it, you know what I mean? Like they found a way to kind of pull you in, to and let your guard down a little bit and feel, kind of the emotion behind it. And that says something about, the story and the way the story was presented. So yeah, I feel it was a good return to a character and some of the characters from the first movie. I think they brought them full circle. Didn't have to get into a lot of exposition, like there wasn't a whole explanation between Maverick and Rooster about his mom not wanting to fly, and here's the reason why I kept your papers, so you lost 4 years and all this sort of thing, from the Navy. You didn't need it. You know what I mean? Like you didn't need all that extra stuff. You just needed, they figured out what the audience was really going to need to see and hear from these characters. And I think they really presented a very focused story, very, very, succinct story. And really, even though it went over 2 hours, it was like, it didn't feel like 2 hours, you know what I mean? It went by quick, and you felt like you were on a ride, and it was, in those flying scenes, I caught myself a couple times, like, I'm gripping the edge of my theater seat, like it's like, I'm not flying this thing. Why am I tense? It's just like,
I'm in a recliner, as a matter of fact.
Talk to me, Goose. So yeah, no, I think they stuck the landing on this big time with all the characters.
Yeah. And by the way, before I forget, Charles Parnell as Admiral Solomon Warlock Bates, not Cyclone, Warlock.
Oh,
so
I
want to make sure.
Love that name, Warlock. Very nice.
So good. Yeah, I want to make sure I made Mr. Parnell got his due, because he was great. If only just for some of the delivery of those lines, like, they're called orders, Maverick. Like, just way to just take the piss right out of him. That was great. Yeah, I agree. I like where we kind of get some closure with the original cast of characters. Again, it's not surprising that Kelly McGinnis didn't really get any closure because Tom Cruise definitely at the head of this, and maybe he's still holding a grudge, or maybe they're just like, hey, that was just a fling, and we'll leave it at that. The interesting thing is, apparently, the character of Charlie was based on a real woman who was a consultant and actually became, I believe she ended up becoming the highest ranking woman in the U.S. Navy. I think she wound up as like an interim deputy director of the Navy or something like that. Like she ended up becoming very, very high up in the ranks, but that was her thing. Like she was known for wearing high heels. And so like when she would be walking around, she was like, everybody knows I'm coming because I'm the only one whose shoes around here make noise,
Yeah.
So I thought that was interesting. But we find out, Goose's mom passed away. So,
Rooster's
Meg Ryan,
mom.
Rooster's mom. I'm sorry. Who was I saying?
Goose's mom.
Well, yeah. I mean, chances are Goose's mom is gone as well. So, grandmother Goose, I guess, at that point, R.I.P. To the fictional person. Anyways, gosh, that took a turn.
This will concurrently make your situation better.
Exactly. I was like going that was like the Chucky School of Genealogy right there. That's what that is.
And she begat.
Actually, that's more like Morgan's side business instead of like instead of 23 and me, it's like Morgan going, you're related to a bunch of jerks,
That's fantastic.
Oh my gosh, where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so we got closure with Rooster's mom finding out that she's passed away.
Yeah,
you get closure with Iceman, which was done very well. I think that it was great that they got a scene in with him and also did it in a way that kind of served the story. Really gave a lot of background on because there is like that. There's a lot of things that you can excuse in these movies that you're like, that would never happen in real life. Like you'd be in jail. You wouldn't be flying planes. You'd be in jail.
Right. Right.
And the only plane you'd be near is the plane they're using to fly you to the prison that you're going to. And but using Iceman as a reason why he can still be where he is, because he's just got a friend in that high of a place that can keep pulling him out of the fire.
Yeah.
I thought that was great. By the way, also Val Kilmer's voice was done totally AI.
Yes, I had read something about that a while back, like because of what he'd been going through, that they've developed, kind of a I don't know what to call it, a service or a component or something like that can basically use his voice but produce words that he's trying to say through the recorded tones of his voice from the past, which is pretty cool.
Yeah, which is horrible though when you just to think about someone who was in his roles was such an eloquent speaker, even with very few words, and now the fact that that's where he's at. But I mean, it's still great that he was able to have a part in this movie. Yeah, and kind of a big part too, really, when you come down to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I of course, you kind of you round the bend with Maverick, and he ends up all happy and stuff. And it was actually nice. Again, comparing it to the original Top Gun, it was kind of nice to have him with a co-star that he had chemistry with. So him and Jennifer Connelly must have gotten along, swimmingly.
Yeah. Yep.
I do like how, even though, and I guess to bring it back to Miss McGinnis again, the reason they never even reached out to her, and she's like, well, and they were like, well, why do you think that was? She says, well, I think I'm going to paraphrase here, but she's like, I'm older, I'm old now, and I'm not in that shape, and I look my age essentially.
Jeez.
And it's like, which is true. I'm sure that had something to do with it. Because Hollywood is jerkish like that, certainly. However, it was nice to see the relationship with Penny and Maverick be somewhat more adult, and kind of have, granted, not fully, because I mean, hey, it's still a freaking movie and fighter pilots and chuckles and all that stuff. But
I've fallen for you, Maverick.
Yeah, I mean, there is that element of it where she's almost like, don't start this crap with me again. All right, I got enough on my mind.
Yeah, right.
But I do like how it feels a little more mature, even though it does devolve into like, oh, by the way, you got to sneak out the window, sort of thing, which was good for a chuckle, at least,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But no, I really did. I felt like everybody, like they landed the plane and everyone kind of ended up in the place where you were hoping they would. And the funny thing is, so a good thing to bring in here is both you and I had like date days with our wives, and we, the romantic fellas that we are, we took our wives to see Top Gun because who needs roses and chocolates when you got Tom Cruise and his alien powers to go and witness in the theater.
That's right.
So my wife, oh my gosh, like at the very end when it's just like you get like the endless loop of the and all there's like the 10-minute cheering going on the flight deck, which would never happen for that long of a duration, and there everyone's palling around and high fives and salutes to the crow's nest and all the stuff that's going on. And she's just leaning over. She's like, "This is so cheesy. Oh my gosh, this is so cheesy." She's like, "There ought to be a rating. They ought to let you know ahead of time. Like, this is an 8 on the cheese scale." And I'm like,
"Good Lord!"
And I'm just like, "Shush, woman, shush! I'm watching Tom Cruise and his Xenu alien powers. Just woo the audience." I don't know. That's not exactly what I said. I'm pretty sure there was a shush involved, which I will pay for later, and rightfully so.
Mm-hmm.
But. Damn well I am going to pay for it.
Yes, you will. Yes, you will.
But the funny thing is, after all of that, she's still. I asked her. I was like, "What would you rate this movie on a scale of 1 to 10?" And she gave it a 7.
Nice,
like a solid 7. And didn't really even think about it that long. And I'm like, considering how effusive you were with your criticism of the sheer amount of cheese at the end of the movie, I'm kind of surprised
I give it a mozzarella rating.
Yeah, I was surprised it didn't. I thought the ceiling was like 6. I thought that's as high as she would go, and she surprised me with a 7. So
nice.
I personally, as she asked me then, I was like, oh, I'd probably give it an 8. That was where I came out on the thing. So, but I did ask you to check with Mrs. The man they call Tim, and find out where she would rate it, and how did she rate this on a scale of 1 to 10?
The text I got back was a solid 8.
Wow. And where would you put yourself?
I think I'd put myself at a solid 8 as well. I don't think it was. It was definitely a very strong outing. Surprised me, like I said. Strong story, strong characters. It's not. It's not at that level that I would put it a 9 or a 10, but I would say it is a strong movie and I would recommend it. I mean, I was chatting with my parents last night, and they were asking me about it, and I forgot to text them today, but I was going to say, "Oh yeah, you should go see this. It's actually pretty good. I think you'd like it," sort of thing. Because we we're talking about it. So yeah, I would recommend this to other folks, whether they are knowledgeable fans or not knowledgeable. It's a great movie, great story, great action, and just is very well done, and I think is definitely an improvement upon the first one. So
unlike the people in my Facebook feed, you don't consider this to be the greatest movie you've ever seen?
Do not consider it to be that. No.
It was. Do you consider it to be life-changing?
No.
Are you considering becoming a naval aviator?
Possibly. No.
Maybe buying an ultralight off of Amazon?
Not quite.
because Patrick has been researching that, and I keep telling him he needs to get himself like a tent so he can get out of the office first before he can get an ultralight, because he doesn't have a place to park an ultralight because he doesn't understand the concept of,
oh my gosh,
of where you would store such a contraption. Are you considering a conversion to Scientology?
No.
Okay, so the alien powers didn't quite hit you full on then.
No, I for alien powers, I just kind of stick to my Star Wars.
Okay. So you're not planning on grabbing an umbrella and standing out in front of your house by the power of Xenu? No. Okay.
No, sorry.
Well, maybe. Actually, I mean, let's face it. Another couple bourbons tonight, and that might happen anyways, which would be great, because then people will be like, I'm gonna talk to the HOA about you, and you're like, I'm the president.
By the power vested in me.
Feel my alien power wrath.
That's
Put on
right.
some pants, would you? Never.
Oh, good Lord. Good Lord.
And another thing.
All right, sir. What have you got for And Another Thing this episode?
Well, I've already kind of talked through it a little bit, but it is not the event, but the main event match from this 2022 offering of WWE Hell in a Cell from, I believe, the beginning of the month or end of May. I forget exactly when it was. But main event was Cody Rhodes versus Seth Rollins in the cell. And highly recommend, if you are a fan of wrestling, to check this one out. Great psychology, as we talked about, with Cody fighting with a very physically visible pectoral tear, just the bruising around his arm, kind of armpit area. I mean, it just looks awful. And anytime Rollins went after it, I mean, they just had the crowd eating out of their hands. It was such a well done match. To the point, as I mentioned earlier, where I feel like this we'll look back at this match as being one of the touchstones that really make his legacy and really elevate him just to that level that his father operated at. You know, not that he could meet or exceed what Dusty Rhodes did, because Dusty Rhodes is just in a class all his own, but Cody is on his way to definitely just establishing his own legacy, and has just had a heck of a run since he's come back to WWE. So highly recommend you check out the American Nightmare, Cody Rhodes versus Seth freaking Rollins, Hell in the Cell. You will not be disappointed, sir.
And one of the things that you missed in this, and I'm kind of surprised that you didn't point it out, was Seth Rollins wearing the Dusty Rhodes polka dots as ring attire.
That is true.
Jab at Dusty's Cody's dad.
Yes.
I was going through every member of the Rhodes family. Dustin, Jed, Phil.
Yes. No, you're right. Yeah. Seth's character right now is just this sort of insane kind of, he calls himself the Visionary, and he's just kind of this over the top character, but he is just really entertaining and fun, and just fun to watch. And yeah, so he comes down and he just tries to find ways to needle his opponent. And this time it was wearing the yellow and black polka dots of the American Dream Dusty Rhodes WWE run. And Cody was not happy. So, but he definitely got his vengeance in the match, and at one point brought out the old bull rope and cowbell, and they had themselves a little mini strap match in the middle of it, and the cowbell was employed. So,
oh my gosh! Now, did Cody manage to dig out the bionic elbow at all?
No, I don't think he did. He was throwing he was only utilizing his left arm, so he was throwing the left jabs. I don't think there was a bionic elbow at any point.
Yeah. Which, oh my gosh, some of that stuff is just funny. The idea that there are these certain moves that are just that much more painful because they are that move in wrestling is just kind of funny to me. That's always amusing.
Although, what is funnier still, if you go back, if you find, I'll have to see if I can find the YouTube link for you, but when the Dudley Boys came back to WWE in 2014, they were feuding with they came down and started a feud with the New Day, which just tells you like how long the New Day's been around, because that was like 8 years ago. So that's crazy. But but at one point when they're, the crowd's going crazy that they're back and they're, beating up on the New Day were heels at the time. So they're beating up on the New Day and the crowd's loving it. And Bubba Ray goes into this, doing the old Rhodes jabs, does the bionic elbow flippy thing where he kind of spins, his fists, and then he does and before he does the bionic elbow, he works in a Stan Hansen, he throws up the old, throws up the hook 'em, horns, and lets off a Stan Hansen yell, and then pops him with the bionic elbow. So that was just a great double, sort of shout out to two great legends. So, anyways, I just thought that was funny.
That was great.
And what is your and another thing, sir?
Well, I had a couple lined up here. But this one kind of took over my weekend, honestly. So I figured it was worth mentioning. I've been on a bit of a book buying tear because I realized my to read pile had gotten dangerously low. And so I purchased several books, and this was one of them. And I was just kind of flipping through, trying to find something new to read. And I had a couple of nonfiction books, and I was like, I feel like I've been reading a lot of nonfiction. I'm still working my way through the Neil Gaiman book that you were so gracious to send to me, which is The View from the Cheap Seats, which is a collection of nonfiction writing and is excellent. However, after a while, I was like, I need a story. I just need a good story. And so I picked this one out, and I thought, we'll see how this goes. This might actually suck. I don't know. So then I ended up inhaling it over the course of about 2.5 days. And I could not put this book down until I finished it last night. And it was a hell of a ride. And it is called Abraham Lincoln Vampire Hunter by Seth Graham Smith.
Nice.
Now, as you might know by my recommendations of For All Mankind, I kind of enjoy a good alternate history yarn, if you will. But this is basically the premise that Abraham Lincoln was a vampire hunter, as well as being the 16th president of the United States. And it's a great overall concept. I won't spoil kind of how it's framed or just how the story itself flows, but it is very well written. It ties in with enough historical, milestones and characters to feel like it fits in there, and it's like, oh, okay. And granted, I didn't go through and research every single point because I'm not reading it for that. But there was enough there that I'm like, oh yeah, I know that character, I know that person, I know that, yep, this event happened. I'm like, okay, there's enough there that it ties in with my historical knowledge, and I'm like, okay, it's legit enough for me to then read it and to kind of believe the universe that it's setting itself up in.
Yeah.
This is a lot of fun. It's a very, it's a vampire book, but it doesn't get. There are parts of it that get, a little bit more into the horror end of the genre, but overall, it's just it's a fun read.
Nice.
To try and to kind of picture, Honest Abe as, going around chopping up vampires.
As Honest Abe has been wont to do.
Yeah, and I guess there's been a movie of it, a movie made out of the book. I've not seen that. Ironically enough, the DVD for the book for that movie is actually about half the price of the book, which I don't know if that,
of course, it is,
bodes well for it. But I would highly recommend the book. I enjoyed it a lot. It was a blast to read. It was a fun yarn, and
nice.
Like I said, I had difficulty putting it down. I inhaled this book in about, it's 330 some odd pages.
Wow.
Took it down in about 2.5 days.
Nice.
A lot of fun.
Very cool. I think I'll have to check that out.
Well, depending on how the real or jabroni goes, perhaps that'll get included in a shipment out to you.
Very nice.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached that time of the show. No, it's not the time when we go back and correct all the stuff that we got wrong this episode, because screw that. That's too much work. No, the time of the show when we finally pack up our traveling medicine show of idiocy and venture on forth down the road, back to real life, back to our real jobs and real responsibilities. Yes, we actually have responsibilities, as frightening as that is. I know. Believe me, every day I wake up and I'm just as shocked that anybody trusts me to do anything beyond get out of bed, just as much as you are. But we have now, our time is drawing to a close, so this is the time of the show where we like to just extend a hearty thank you to all the listeners and all the members of the Free Range Idiocy congregation for coming here and tuning in and listening and downloading and sharing this with others. And if you're confused right now, maybe you don't even know what you're listening to, in which case, hey, thanks for the listen anyways, and move along. If you're curious what the congregation is, no, we don't believe in aliens and all that stuff. I mean, unless that's your thing, that's whatever. But it's not contingent upon being part of the Free Range's congregation. Basically, just got to download our stuff. That's all it is. That's all it is. We're a very low bar to hop over, because otherwise we wouldn't be able to get over ourselves. Again, we've got bad knees as well. Did I mention that? Bad knees. That's another reason why we're not in the Top Gun movie. There's no way our knees would stand up to the G's that we would
MLM, if you will.
Yeah. Small. It's a very humble MLM that we haven't managed to figure out how to make any damn money off of. It's like the worst of all MLMs. Like, even the people at the top aren't making any money. It's just a complete failure on all fronts, really. It's like Pampered Chef with no utility and money involved whatsoever.
How do we scale this up?
Yeah, there's no downline managers. It's just a mess. It's a mob, basically. It's a mob mentality. That's what it is.
Mm-hmm.
But if you'd like to join, hey, don't say we didn't warn you. You can find all of our episodes at our website, which is freerangeidiocy.com. You can find all the episodes there. You can also subscribe directly through the Podbean app. You can also find us on the podcast purveyors of your choice, the major of which are Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We are also on... we're on Alexa, I believe now. We're on Spotify. I got us hooked up on a bunch of other ones this week because I apparently have nothing better to do with my life except foist our idiocy upon the world. But if you don't find us on the podcast purveyor of your choice, what you do is you send an email to Tim at freerangeidiocy.com and let him know where you want the podcast to be, and I'll see if I can hook that up for you. Same with if you got any questions, thoughts, or concerns, any outright offers of bribery. Those would be fan-friggin-tastic because, again, we don't make $1 off of this. It'd be nice to start churning a little cash off of this thing.
Mm-hmm.
But, if you got complaints, suggestions for shows, send those to Tim at freerangeidiocy.com as well, and he'll get back to you forthwith. Come hither. I don't know. My brain is shutting down because right now we are hurtling towards midnight.
Getting late, folks.
And it's oh my gosh. The man they call Tim was in that HOA meeting for way too long. And yeah, my brain is shot.
Pull the cord, Goose. Pull the cord.
Yeah. So, and you can also follow us on the social medias. We are at Free Range Idiocy on Instagram, Twitter, and the Facebook. Make sure you follow us, like us, mash that subscribe button, whatever the kids say to do. We're not on the TikTok, so because you don't need to see us.
No, you don't.
And we don't even know how the damn TikTok works, and I just don't have the patience for my daughter to explain it to me. I get lost. But now we finally come to the time of the show where I stop talking, and that ought to be a relief to everybody, including myself, because I'm not even sure what my name is anymore. I'm that tired at this point. But I hand this over to the man they call Tim, the less idiotic of the two idiots who run this show, but not before I ask the second most important question in all of human history. The first, of course, being what is hip. The second being, what the hell did we learn this episode?
We have learned the following, my friend.
Talk to me, Goose.
Uncle Todd, he's flummoxed by milk duds and jujubes.
I'm not flummoxed. I'm just like actually adhered to this like naga hide freaking seat. That was the other thing. So we went to this theater and they didn't even have like the recliners. It was like old school. I went in there. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm like in a third world country all of a sudden.
Oh my goodness.
It's like the dark ages we're going in here.
It's like you're the Thurston Howell III of like theater viewing or something. It's like, Lovey, they don't have my seat.
They didn't even have the good seltzer here.
How dare they?
Oh, and another thing. So my wife, I just don't buy stuff from the concession stand in movie theaters. Because quite honestly, I got to put gas in like the least fuel efficient vehicle on the planet. So I'm definitely not buying a concession.
Boy.
My wife though wanted her some popcorn and water, and not even like the fancy water that they say comes from a spring, even though it just comes from a tap somewhere. So she got like just a cup of tap water and ice. $14 fracking for popcorn and tap water. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. So that has me more flummoxed than the stuff that I was adhered to.
Okay.
If you want to go with true flummoxity.
Oh, it is getting close to midnight. Flummoxity has been whipped out. Here we go.
Yeah.
We have also learned, ladies and gentlemen, the wrestling world is having a bit of a rough May-June time frame here. It's turbulent people.
I think Vince drove over a black cat or something on the way to Titan Towers one day. Something. You know what? I can't even think of what he might have done. You know what? I don't want to think of what he did because, again, I'm going to need to wipe myself down with a wet nap afterwards, just trying to think of that.
Sorry, Vince. We're not in this together with you. We're not.
No. You stay way the hell over there. I'm staying way the hell over here.
Oh, my gosh. We've also learned the man they called Tim, not a fan of Take My Breath Away.
Take my breath away.
Oh, God. Thank you for that.
Dum, dum. Dum, dum, dum. Oh my gosh, that synth sound too. That's been one of the disturbing things over the past years is listening to the 80s like synths and kind of like 80s music make a comeback. I'm like, no, I thought we all agreed that's better off gone. I thought we'd all agreed on this. I thought we were going to skip right from disco to grunge and just forget any of that ever happened. But apparently not. Apparently not.
No. We've also learned Talk to Me Goose will be the man they call Tim's new call sign for Uncle Todd. I'm just saying.
How many? It must have been at least a half dozen times in the movie. That was the one thing about that movie that really did start getting me out after a while. I'm like, okay, we get it. You're. It's like I was waiting for Goose to show. I was waiting for Goose to show up, like Anthony Edwards to show up as a Force ghost. That's what I was waiting for. I mean, we've already got them going down the Death Star trench.
Yeah,
we're already there. Why not all of a sudden, hey Mav, Goose, and he's all blue and glowy and stuff.
There you go.
I mean, why not?
Got to make that happen. Got to make that happen. And finally, we have learned Top Gun Maverick has the free-range idiocy stamp of approval. 2 thumbs up, 5-star match rating, whatever you want to call it. We're endorsing this through and through. Strong story, strong character, strong outing. Do check it out.
Which is not great. That was back like when Ted Kennedy endorsed Bill Clinton, and Clinton was like, "Please, Ted, just don't say anything. I don't need your help.
I need a wet nap."
So somewhere Tom Cruise is like, "Oh, those idiots are recommending me? Great, I'm dead. I'm done. The movie's done. People are going to be demanding refunds.
What have you done to me?
Just don't help me. That's all I'm asking for."
Indeed.
He's going to send his Xenu alien powers to get us.
Oh, gosh. Well, I guess that's the other thing we learned is the power of Xenu is a thing.
At least in my mind it is. That's how I square it. I don't know. I didn't pay all the money to move up the ranks. I'm just taking a guess.
Well, with all that, folks, we thank you again, as Uncle Todd has already.
I love how after you just go completely off the rails, and you're just like, with all that being said,
yeah,
like the fact that any of this has made any sense. You're the calm hand on the wheel of this ship that's just being dragged to hell.
Indeed,
and thank God for that, sir. God bless you for that.
With all that being said. Forthwith. keep your ears to the grindstone. All right. As we like to close, Well, and as I was trying to say, thank you for the listenership. Thank you for the downloads. But as we close, or as we like to close, be safe, be healthy, be kind, be good to one another. And since Uncle Todd is all out of milk duds and jujubes, would you please hit the lights on the way out?
It's like I picked the wrong week to quit drinking.
I beg your pardon, what did you say?
Do it.
You're such a disappointing pair. I prayed so hard for you. Get out. And don't come back until you've redeemed yourselves.
And listen, Margaret, if you put up them purple drapes again, we're coming for you. I'm telling you, I'm the president of the HOA. I've had
That's
enough.
right. No more. The line is drawn here.
Yeah. There are 4 lights. And there should only be 3. You hear me, Louie? You hear me, Louie? 4 lights out front. You got 3. You got a new light bulb. I'm telling you. Otherwise, you're out of here.
This is quite the cornucopia of cultural references we've gone through. It's been Ghostbusters, wrestling, Top Gun, Picard.
And where's my tribute? Want that bottle
Xenu.
of old Forester on my doorstep tomorrow morning. Otherwise, there might be something extra under your lawnmower.